The University of the People defines history as the knowledge and study of the past. It is the story of the past and a form of collective memory. History is the story of who we are, where we come from, and where we are headed. Notably, many avoid this subject as it calls for revisiting some ugly truths, revealing who we and others are as individuals and people. This morning, we have the pleasure of having Ms. Toni Frederick Armstrong, history teacher at the Basseterre High School, and one of her history protégés to help us discuss this subject and the recent experience in the Caribbean Secondary Education Council CSEC examinations. Welcome to Good Morning, SKN.
Welcome, ladies.
Good morning.
Yes, this is such a privilege to be sitting
next to your favorite teacher.
Well, in a way, but we'll get to that hopefully if we have time, in a way. So we're here to talk about history again. How did you find the recent CSEC exams, Toni?
Well, I think you should probably ask Tanisha that. This is one of my fifth formers, Tanisha, was a fifth former, Tanisha Warner. My feeling would be that it was really rough, but let's see what Tanisha has to say.
Well, in my opinion, it was decent enough. I feel that I prepared well enough for the questions that were brought, and that I answered to the best of my ability, though some of them kind of threw me. But I just backtracked and found a little bit of knowledge on the next question and then cleaned it up.
But perhaps I should explain what happened because of the delays with COVID for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
These guys were really at a disadvantage because they were behind going from third to fourth. They were behind going from fourth to fifth because the school year never was completed. So every year they went in to the next form, they were behind in the syllabus. And there was a lot of catching up to do. And of course, so they're behind going into fifth. And these guys worked so hard. We did classes in the Christmas. We did classes in Easter. They came back in third term, which is something they don't normally do because they had so much catching up. They did so much more homework. Then at the very last minute, CXC said, we're going to give you guys the topics. There's just the broad topics, which was honestly a gift. And I'm still grateful for that because it meant that of all of the topics that could come, again, general, but they could say, well, there will be a question on the sugar revolution or a question on the Emancipation Act. So it allowed us to say, okay, fine, we can focus on these topics. But one of the main topics that they gave, the question, I'm not even sure I understood what the question was. So the students were preparing in the way that the syllabus is laid out, in the way that it's normally taught. And they came from a very unusual angle. I mean, the other teachers were like, have they changed the syllabus? So it was for students who were really focused on that question, like Tanisha was, but because she has such broad knowledge, like she said, she was able to just, wheel and come again, as they say. But I think it was a shock for a lot of students. And again, those who have a more broad knowledge and who, had been studying a little longer were fine, I think.
My full confidence, though.
Yes.
And then, of course, there was the multiple choice, and boy, did we prepare. How many we had? Thank God for the online system that they put in place because of COVID. We took full advantage of that. I was with these guys several nights a week. And we just rehearsed and prepared.
So you went to night school, Tanisha?
Yes, we did, and all year long, not just, but certainly coming up to the exam. So we did what we could, but it wasn't easy because it was rushed. I felt the syllabus was really rushed because of COVID, and the exams weren't moved, and I think they gave us a couple extra weeks. But I don't think it was easy, and I really commend Tanisha and her all of the fifth formers and all of the schools for getting through.
So Tanisha, I'm going to put it out there. So can we expect a distinction from you?
I hope so.
No pressure.
Not at all. So Ms. Frederick, how do you manage to make history fun? I remember how you make it fun for me, but it's a different generation. How do you manage to make it fun for them?
Again, if I sadly, because of COVID, there isn't as much time to make things fun. I did try this year. There was a little bit of a breather, so I did in some of the other forms try to throw in a few fun things like dramatic presentations and let's pretend you're in, the British Parliament debating the Emancipation Act. So, but there wasn't Well, first of all, with COVID, there were no field trips for the longest while. By the time they said, okay, field trips, it was pretty much the end of the school year. So that ruled out a lot of the ability to say, like, go to Brimstone Hill or the Wingfield Rum Distillery or any of those things. And again, with the fifth formers in particular, it was a case of there's just so much content. Do we have time? At one point, we had said, great, everybody's going to do presentations. And then as it got closer, I said, guys, you know what? We don't have time. Because it means that 2 or 3 classes will be taken up with people doing presentations, which would be fun. You guys did your presentations. I still remember that. But, you know, we had to scrap it in the interest of covering the syllabus. So I guess the best you can do is, I guess, just be an interesting teacher, be willing to talk about anything they're interested in talking about. You know, you can't be too rigid. So if you're talking about a topic and there's some sort of related thing, maybe in modern day, I try to connect things to modern day. Like when we're talking about, you know, the effects of slavery and you know, our skin color becoming a mark of degradation, then we connected it to the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, to just sort of make it relevant, make them understand that problems that we have today, well, not just problems, things that are happening today are connected to our history.
All right, Tanisha, did you feel that sense when you were going through it, of that connectivity? And even now?
Yeah, I did. Like most of the conversations that I would have with my father, I realized that some of the stuff she was talking about in school, they were coming back and I was like, this making sense? No. So I was really glad for, and she's a very fun teacher, honestly. I always feel integrated in whatever we're doing, whatever topics we're doing, I always feel that it's fun and I'm learning a lot more than I wouldn't learn out in the world, All
right, I'm going to keep the focus on you.
I didn't know she felt that way.
So I want to keep the focus on you just a little bit longer. In terms of the way that history applies to real life, a lot of people say, you know what, history is a boring subject. History is better left in the past. God knows when I was doing it, I felt that way to some extent. I feel differently now. As a history protege of Toni's, what's the relevance of it to you?
I feel that as any young person going out into the world and any person in a diverse culture and in the world that we are now, I feel that we should at least know stuff that happened back then so we could be able to understand when we're going out into the future. Because if we don't have a good amount of knowledge about the past, how can we progress into the future? And I feel that history helped me a lot especially with writing and trying to get all that knowledge, because it's a very heavy content subject, so you have to know a lot. And I honestly love history. I love reading. I would read textbooks on textbooks of history. It's very interesting to know where I come from, all the struggles that led me to this point where I can be able to walk freely, wear a head wrap, and just be my true self and knowing where I came from in society.
Those are very good points. Absolutely proud of you that you made them. And I know somebody else who is as well.
If you couldn't tell how proud I am.
So I will dive right into it, straight to my favorite teacher, yes. So in your opinion, how...
Well, you need to tell them why I'm your favorite teacher.
Spoken like a teacher.
Sorry, I was being very teacher.
As I said, she not only taught us history, but if there was an issue in class, including something personal, we all felt comfortable to talk to her. And it's amazing that our history class, sometimes they turned into a whole family life class, and then we diverted right back to history. And Tanisha shared the same sentiment. Anything that they had an issue on, Ms. Frederick was open to speak about it. And that's what we want, teachers that listen, and not just teachers that say, let's get it on. So yeah, so that's why you are my favorite teacher. And she always encouraged you. And just now she gave me the sweetest words. You are doing great. Oh my God.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud of you.
Hashtag you later,
and you too.
With Let's Get It On.
I almost broke into song, so you all need to give thanks that I didn't.
So Ms. Frederick, in your opinion, how relevant is history? How relevant is the history included in the curriculum to our Caribbean experience and context?
Well, I was actually in high school when we switched to the CXC syllabus. That's how old I am. And prior to that, we were doing British history.
Okay.
So we were studying about Francis Drake, but in British history, Francis Drake is a hero.
Yes.
When we switch to CXC history, we start looking at it from the Caribbean context, and we all know that Francis Drake was a privateer, right? He was a pirate who stole stuff on behalf of Queen Elizabeth I. So it's a very different angle.
Yeah.
But it is relevant, completely relevant, because it covers Caribbean history from beginning, the indigenous people. And currently the syllabus ends at around when the countries became independent. So it ends at about 1985. But that's already 30 years, no? Really. So it's going to have to extend a little further. The problem is getting all that information in. But it is all relevant. The only thing maybe we could use a little less time with, even though it's part of the understanding, is that we do look a tiny bit at European history because we have to understand the context of the Renaissance and how Christopher Columbus came to be here. So you do have to get that in, but you can teach something in 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, or you could teach something in an hour. So I think that maybe in order to make a little bit more room or a bit more time for some of the other topics, that there could be some adjustments here and there. But I am comfortable with the syllabus covering everything. I'm concerned, though, that it is a lot of information. And my advice to anybody in first form now and second form, save your notebooks, because it's all going to, well, actually, I have to, let me change that, because they're now changing the syllabus, actually.
Oh, okay.
And first, second, and eventually third form is going to be a more local content. And the CXC syllabus is going to start a little later in the year, which means that we're going to be really shoving everything into a shorter space of time. But, save your notebooks, because you do have to go back and go back over everything. All the way back to first form stuff and second form stuff. And so, yeah, but it covers what it needs to cover, but it's a lot. It's a lot of information. And so when you have these unexpected things like COVID crises, you really...
They're going to be setbacks, obviously. All right, so I can actually appreciate the focus on the local curriculum, local history, because I think that was one of the things that was missing when I was in school. And so, Tanisha, to your point, how much exposure to local history do you think you received when you were preparing for history in general, but more so for CXC?
My eyes are open to a lot of information, but I still feel that there is more that I need to know. Definitely.
Okay.
It's touched on in first form, just barely. Coming out of primary school, we sort of go over the independence and so on, and the flag and the national symbols. But one of the things that teachers can do, and I certainly try, is again when you're making those connections. So if you're talking about the slave trade, you say, so in Basseterre, and then you give examples, you give local examples. One of the huge topics in the syllabus is in the 1930s, there were worker protests across the region. Well, Buckley's was one of them. And in fact, St. Kitts features in those textbooks, which is pretty cool when you think about it. Because these textbooks are very much centered on the big islands. The examples are often the big islands. So when you see St. Kitts, you get very excited. So there is that. It's actually part of the syllabus. But even, again, when you're giving examples, so what happened after emancipation? Well, in the larger countries, all the former slaves left the plantations. But in small islands, like St. Kitts, every square inch of St. Kitts was under sugar. There was nowhere for them to go.
Exactly.
And there's actually a map that actually shows you all the sugar estates. And really, all of St. Kitts was under sugar. So these poor people had nothing to do but to stay and keep working for people who had them enslaved. So if you can give St. Kitts examples in the CXC syllabus, that helps to make those connections as well. So I think that, we have some pretty good history teachers out there. I think everybody's doing that. I hope
that's one
everybody's
right
doing
here. So Tanisha, what was your most interesting subject in history? Well, I should say interesting topic in history, and your least interesting. So the most interesting and the least interesting.
Can I answer that too? Because teachers have least interesting.
My most interesting topic, it's so hard to choose because I like all of them, honestly. But the one that stands out the most to me is definitely slavery.
Okay.
And least interesting would be which one it would be by.
She loved them all.
I'm not putting words in
No,
her.
wait, I change it. The most interesting one would be plantation life on slavery plantation. And the least interesting would be Christopher Columbus when he came to the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Frederick?
Well, for me as well, the whole sugar revolution, slavery thing, that what really made us who we are, that stuff. And fortunately, this isn't a topic that we currently do at my school, because you can't do all of the themes. But we did 20 years ago, and it was economic diversification, which is why you guys did your projects. Really dull. This is where you talk about after sugar, they branched off into all of these different crops. And it's difficult to teach, it's boring. What I did with the Quartensias group is I said, you guys are gonna teach it. So here, you guys are gonna teach about bananas, and you guys are gonna teach about arrowroot, and you're gonna teach about rice, and everybody got into it. And they came with samples of rice and different banana shoots, and I was like, where is it gonna end? I would never have thought of doing that. So again, you have to, but it's tough.
I love the way you did that. You reminded me of some of the strategies that I used when I was in the classroom. You do it. You do it. You do it. You get a whole lot more of an enriching experience.
And you get more involvement. And I think some of them said when that question came up on the exam, they said, pick a thing, and they were ready.
Yeah, they practice and they prepare.
All right, so Tanisha, the final word is yours, and we really want to know what advice you'd give to other students about history in general, preparation for CXC or exams, and generally just preparing for exams and even life, future.
Definitely you should read. So you have a topic on slavery, slave resistance. So you're going to read that whole chapter. And then after you have read it, you can write down the basic main points. So like, who were the most important ones? When did they happen? And all the different revolts and different revolts and riots. You can also read and then explain it to someone so that you can understand it. Because something that I read a while ago is that when you explain something in the simplest terms, that means you understand it. But if you're going all around, that means you really understand it. You can also read and then say it out loud so you could hear yourself saying it. And then while you're doing all of that, you're going to basically be remembering all of it. So all of it is just getting into there. And I'll leave the last verse to you.
That's the advice I always give them. When you write something in your own words, it sticks in your head. It's magic. And that's essentially it. The other advice I always give, because history in particular, and any topic that requires essay writing, so English and so on, how you write is really important. You can't go and just put down point form. And so practice writing. But the key is, I always say, pretend that you're explaining it to somebody who knows nothing about the topic. Don't assume they know anything. So you can't just say the population of the Caribbean increased after the introduction of sugar. You have to say, because sugar required a large labor force, thousands of Africans were brought here and the population increased. Sorry if I'm getting into history. But it's an example of imagining that you are explaining it to your granny. Use simple terms. Don't try to use big old words that you're not sure the meaning of and how to spell. Simple is sometimes easier. It's certainly easier, and it's often more clear. And so I just connect my stuff to Tanisha's stuff and say, go get them.
That's great. Listen, I can't let you go without letting our viewers know that Toni is a major part of the reason that I'm here today. I've mentioned you so many times on the show. I said that you've been my radio mom. 20 years ago, you introduced me to media and kept me under your wing, and I so appreciate that. And I see that you're doing the same thing with your students. All of us here, you've touched us. So we're really appreciative of everything that you've done.
Very appreciative.
Continue the good work.
I am so humbled, and honestly, you often don't know the effect you have on people. And so to hear it, of course, face to face, that makes you very emotional. But thank you, and my absolute pleasure, and I'm so proud of you guys. And I couldn't have even imagined anything better than this.